Uh, I was very, very lucky, as Bill said, to get to know my maternal grandmother, who came from Nordfjord. We spent literally 5 or 6 years together. When I would go home from my military assignments for Christmas and during the summer occasionally to just talk about her life. Uh, I had recommended to her to start this diary so that we could just have it for the family. And as I say in the preface to the book, she couldn't do it more than about 10 pages because she just couldn't write in English very well. And so we did most of this oral history through me taking recordings and notes. I don't know if you remember, I'm sure some of you do at least, some of you are probably too young, but back in the 1949 to 1957 on television was this show. You're only going to see a brief moment of it, but I'll tell you why I'm showing this to you here in just a minute. So here it is. I hope you can hear it. Do any of you remember that show? My grandmother was an ardent fan of that show. And it was put out, as I said, in 1949. And it followed the year after the movie that came out starring Irene Dunne called I Remember Mama. That was the name of the movie. So, it doesn't have a lot to do with my book, but it's kind of what got me going. I guess I was fortunate in that I'm 74 now, but I had a chance to know my grandmother very, very well. And she was an amazing person in so many ways. One was that she had a great long-term memory. Short-term faded like all of us do, but long-term she could just recite things that happened. It's just almost photographic memory. And so it was amazing from 1968, 69 until she passed in 1974 to tap into that memory and hear her talk about her life. And what was most amazing is that she remembered her discussions with her grandmother back in 1880s. And so we'll talk about that when we get further on into the book. But my encouraging word here to you is that if any of you or any of your relatives are thinking of writing a memoir or a book like this, I'd be more than happy to help, just to show you some of the things that I use to put it together. This photograph here on the screen shows down in the left corner just numbers of people I talked to, and that, of course, obviously her, but plus all of my cousins and aunt and uncles when I was younger. I was able to tap into their memories of the family story. But she kept a journal also, and what she also loved to do, as you'll see if you have the book, is cut out newspaper clippings for things that she attended, and what a help that was. And in those instances where she discussed things that happened in her life there in Minneapolis, Minnesota, that she didn't have newspaper clippings about, I used newspapers.com, which is I guess a subsidiary of Ancestry, and absolutely indispensable if you're trying to write a little bit more about the history. And so I do recommend that. And if you'd like to use that and don't want to have your own account, if you won't tell anybody, I'm not sure it makes any difference, but I'd be happy to access my account if you have any questions or would like to see something at a certain date and time, and I can help pull it out. It's easy to do. I was also lucky in the fact that we live in Washington, and so the use of the National Archives came in handy a lot. I would drive over there and access that for some information that I needed, easy to do. And so all kinds of things that that I used, and was very happy to have that. And so there's the cover and the back cover of my book. That picture that you see of her was was a part of a picture with her and her husband Rasmus for their passport when they returned to Norway finally, their only time back in 1948. So 45 years had elapsed since she had arrived in the States, and we'll talk about that too. But she probably spent 30 years in planning for the trip at least. And so when she finally went, she said it was a little anticlimactic in some ways because she had already planned it so well. But she wanted to see all of the people that she'd left behind, and there were a lot of them still there, and it was a great trip for them. On the back cover, it shows the month of April 1903, and her story was just amazing in that when she started off this trip, I thought she would tell me that she was met at the boat dock with all kinds of friends and relatives, but she said that wasn't the case. For many people who departed as an immigrant from Norway, there was a kind of a distaste in the mouth of a lot of people that you are leaving behind a country that you shouldn't be. And that wasn't certainly true in general, but there was a lot of that too that went on. But her unique story prevented also from having much family there because her father was a absolute medically depressed person. Her mother had died, her grandmother had died, and all of her close relatives that she loved had passed. So she didn't leave Norway till she was in her early 20s in 1903. And as you see, she was born in 1878. So she was not a young girl when she left. But so that's that. I wanted you just to see what she looked like and how near her end of her life. And this is her. Of course, my grandmother, my mother's mother, was taken in 1971.
That's the end of her life. In her nursing home.
My wife told me that Grandma Thorson had long hair. Now, I wouldn't have believed that, but I never saw her with it any other way than the top of her head. So my wife had to tell me that she'd seen her once that way. I had never done that. Great lady.